make it sound like I run Frankenstein's laboratory out there, which in a way we kind of do, which is, Dave isn't really kidding too much. But I'll give you a little bit of, and I point it towards slide. There it is. Give you a little bit of background on SARTA. We provide fixed route and paratransit services in Stark County. Last year we transported 2.6 million riders. We have 100 vehicles in our fleet. We have 34 routes. We run 2 fixed routes, one to Akron and the other one to Cleveland. It's actually the longest scheduled fixed route in the state of Ohio, and we run a CNG 40-foot bus on that. We are the first transit system in the state of Ohio to have a public CNG facility. Some other firsts, we are actually the second one to have our first iPhone app that you can download and figure out when your bus is going to be there. And probably most interesting fun fact is we have the third most Facebook followers of any transit system in the state of Ohio. So if you go to our Facebook page, you can see what we're doing. This is a layout of where all of our pickups and drop-offs are for our paratransit system. That's where we go to someone's house, pick them up, and take them where they want to go. Last year we did about 150,000 trips that way. The 2 vehicles you have out front do that service. Those are both, all those vehicles out there are CNG operated vehicles. A little demographic of our fleet. We have 11 CNG paratransit buses that are smaller vehicles. They were actually built in Indiana and converted. We have 11 what's called the MV1s. It's a smaller car that's out front. It's actually built on the old Hummer line in Indiana. We have 8 traditional CNG buses that actually have the Cummins engines in them. We have 3 CNG Honda Accord or Honda Civics. They're actually built on the line here in Ohio. We also have 3 Chrysler Town & Countries. They're actually converted here in Ohio, and the conversion kit that was used to convert those is the only EPA-approved kit to convert those Town & Countries, and those are actually done here in Ohio also. We have 4 diesel-electric hybrids in our fleet, and one which is probably my Frankenstein bus that David was referring to. It's called a dual-fuel CNG diesel bus. It was talked about earlier in one of the other presentations that Cummins was talking about, but this actually mixes CNG and diesel at the same time. It actually uses the diesel fuel to use the to do the compression, because there aren't any spark plugs specifically on that. When you get into looking at CNG vehicles, you'll hear dual fuel, bi-fuel, and sole source. You'll start getting into terminology that kind of makes your head spin a little bit, which I think is a big barrier. Not only is the lack of infrastructure, but just the lack of knowledge in general. Here's a picture of one of our hybrid buses, and we also have bike racks in all of our buses. Another one of the problems when you get into conversion is what I call the big word problem. You have to think about converting MMBTUs to therms, to DGE, to GEG, or to you can imagine there's not very many terms of trying to get a common baseline of lingo between everybody talking. It's like you're talking another foreign language practically. And then I learned there's more than that. There's BTUs also. So it's like you feel like you're Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory sometimes. On our walk towards moving into CNG, one of the things we did, we worked with Stark State, our local college, in trying to do an evaluation of our hybrids versus a diesel. And one of the things is you probably see the technology generally kind of moving away from battery-powered transportation. And I think one of the reasons is, one, the high cost of batteries, and also the total lifetime cost of the recycle of the batteries themselves are pretty much an issue. What we did find is that we did see an increase in our MPG to about 5.44 miles, which doesn't sound much, but when you're driving a 40-foot vehicle that weighs 28,000 pounds, that's a big increase over the previous mileage of about 4.5 miles on a regular transit bus. However, when you start looking at CNG versus diesel, there's about 50% lower NOx or noxious oxide emissions. There's lower particulate matter. One of the other things you don't have to do with the CNG vehicles is do what they call the secondary burn when it comes out of the engine, where you probably heard them talking about earlier on is the urea filters, which, well, we all know what urea is. So you're actually putting that on your vehicles now to do a secondary burn. So it's kind of funny. We fuel diesel and then we fuel that too at the same time. We don't like to say what it really comes from, but it's the part in the barn that stinks. It also CNG also has about 89% lower CO emissions, which is a big deal, especially when you're looking at California and all that other stuff. Another thing David probably saw when he comes out there while I'm running a Frankenstein laboratory is big graphs. I think when you do a PowerPoint presentation, you have to put a big graph in that nobody can read, and this was mine. We did another study with Stark State in looking at a demonstration between our Frankenstein bus, which is the dual fuel CNG diesel bus, with a regular versus regular CNG and diesel. And what we did find is, if you remember, I was telling you the kit was actually built by an Ohio manufacturer. The tanks themselves were actually built by another Ohio-based manufacturer. The current tanks are what they call carbon fiber, where they're actually using the same type of technology they make airplanes out of. I don't know if you've ever seen it price an airplane, but they're not cheap. And the same thing with the tanks. And so what this company we work with, it's called Wire Tough Tanks, actually took an Ohio-based concept, which was they wrapped tires, steel butter tires, the radial tires out of the, they're actually Goodyear retirees. And they did the same thing with tanks, where they actually then took the tanks and wound them with a steel, with wire, and that actually cut the cost literally in half of those tanks. And so this is the first time that we actually took an older bus that had about 500,000 miles on it, repowered that vehicle with a CNG diesel, and we actually found is we're actually able to increase the fuel mileage on that vehicle from about for the regular diesel bus to that bus to about 13%. But what was more interesting is we were actually able to demonstrate a mileage increase was using CNG from diesel from about 5 miles per gallon to almost 8.89 miles per gallon. So really what we're seeing is if you can use those vehicles in the right way using longer distances, you can really start saving some money on those specific applications of those vehicles. I'm going to go a little bit into some of the infrastructure. You've heard everybody talking about the vehicles, how wonderful they are and all that other stuff. But one of the things that you're talking about with fueling is the gas comes from the street. It goes through a CNG compressor where it actually gets it up to about 3,600 PSI. It's stored in tanks and then finally goes from the dispenser into the vehicle itself. If you ever come down to the world headquarters of the Stark Area Regional Transit Authority, you got that, yeah, there's only one. So you could say world headquarters, it's, anyway, it's not like we're going to move to Mexico or anything. We're kind of stuck here. But the way that works is the public infrastructure is in the front. We actually have some what's called over the back, in the back, where we actually fuel our own vehicles. So we specifically designed this facility to really be joint use. One of the issues we have heard is some of the over-the-road long-haul trucks can't get in there, but every once in a while we see one try to whoop a jaw and try to back in there, and that's always fun to watch them do that. But you'll probably, if you'd ever come down there, you would see a constant parade of vehicles, and sometimes there's even lines, and sometimes we've had some fights over people saying, I need to go because I need to get off work. Some of the usages, since we've been opened in May of 2012, we've done over 11,000 public transactions. We're using about 55,000 gasoline gallon equivalent, and what that's saying is that one of the interesting things about natural gas versus diesel, it's kind of like a Goldilocks gas. It's very finicky. It has to be just the right pressure. It has to be just the right flammability. If not, it's not going to go, because by nature, natural gas is inert unless exposed to the right percentage of oxygen, which needs to be between 13 and 17%. And when I start doing this, my staff rolls their eyes at me and say, move on to something else. We're probably the busiest CNG facility, at least right now, in the state of Ohio. Some of the users are Kimball, PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, Hometown Ice, Earth and Wood, and a number of other ones actually use it. This is just another picture. That's not ours. That's somewhere in Sweden, but it shows you it's actually the Swedish subsidiary of SARTA, and we that's kind of what it looks like. This is actually our facility here in Canton. We're partnering. This actually is a joint partnership with us and Clean Energy. Clean Energy was referred to earlier. It's owned by T. Boone Pickens and his company. There's actually about 200 of these stations that Clean Energy owns across the country, and they're also partnering with Flying J then and putting them in. Their business model is kind of what was referred to earlier as where they partner with the anchor and they do the PR and outreach for those stations. Now, this is behind the fence, so to speak, a dispenser where we fuel up our own buses. This is the magic box where all the nice stuff happens in there. There's actually two 360 horsepower compressors that are in there that fire at different periods of time. The interesting thing about natural gas also, one of the things you don't think about very much is when you get gas from a gas can, you don't necessarily think about what's in it. When you're getting natural gas from the pipeline, the same thing when your furnace doesn't care what's in it. Engines are a very delicate piece of technology that's highly engineered. It needs to make sure the natural gas you put in it is specifically natural gas. The one thing we found last winter, there is no standard for what's in the pipeline. It's what you get. And sometimes, depending on what they're pulling from the interstate pipelines versus the local ones, there could be a heck of a lot more water in them. And what you see right there is what's called a dryer unit. We may, sometimes in the winter, we got up to almost 30% of the natural gas coming from the street was water. And so that canister, what you see right there, is called a drying unit. It actually takes the natural gas and runs it through a desiccant unit that actually has a dew point of minus 134 degrees, potentially. We need to keep it down that low just to make sure that all the moisture is suspended in the desiccant. What needs to happen whenever it reaches saturation point, you literally close the valves off of the canister itself, and you actually put it through a drying phase. And the interesting thing is, I didn't know this until we started doing it, you actually dry it out by heating up natural gas to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, and it takes about 8 hours then for that hot natural gas front to move through the desiccant unit and then actually dry the water out. So it actually catches the water, the moisture, you heard about them talking about the separation needs to occur. Sometimes the separation of oil doesn't necessarily occur either, and so we need to catch all that before we put it into the engines of the vehicles. And so if you don't do that, your vehicle doesn't run, it doesn't like it very much at all, and you potentially could burn up your engine. And so that's a very important piece of technology. And we actually built our facility. We didn't think we'd really be that busy, so we put one of those in. Well, let's just say that didn't work very well. We designed our facility to handle 17,000 GG a month, and we're doing 55,000, so we couldn't ever turn it off to do maintenance on it. So now we have two of them. So let's just say that one of the things when you start out being a gas station operator is you learn that your customers want to come and go very quickly, and then they walk in your front door, knock on your door, and say, it's not working. So I can tell you how to reset credit card machines, the other machines. We can tell you how to make change, and we did even start doing squeegee things too. So. This is just what the handle itself looks like. This is the inside of the nozzle. It's not a black hole. What happens is there's actually I'll show you another slide, but this nozzle actually clamps down when you fuel the vehicle. This is what the actual nozzles themselves look like on a larger vehicle. So you actually take that piece of equipment and then you hook it on, and away you go. It's about as complicated as, actually it's probably a little bit easier than filling up your car. It's actually pretty slick on using them. This is our entire skid that we have out there. The one thing you don't realize also, and you kind of heard talking, is if you go into actually using CNG as a product, the one thing you think about is, one, there is a component of the commodity for natural gas, but you're using electricity and a lot of it to compress it. So there is that little part you do have to consider in it, but it's only a minor part, maybe 10% or something like that. So if you're ever thinking about building one, let me tell you, it's an interesting process. The prices that were given to you, about $1.6 million for a skid, is probably right, but the thing is, you don't need to go out. What basically we put out there was a Cadillac. You don't need to do that. You can daisy chain. You can do what's called slow fuel, which a lot of garbage trucks will use, where you come in at night, you hook your truck up, and it can fuel over an 8 to 10 hour period of time. But what we have here is called quick fuel. You can come up, fuel a car within 10 or 12 minutes, and away you go. What we're trying to do when we put in alternative infrastructure and anything like this is mimic the reliability, the dependability, and the ease that you see currently. And that's one of the major issues. You don't want to have to do a science project to drive something. Yeah, we all feel better that it's domestic, it's greener, and all that other stuff, but you know what? I got to go to work, I got to take the kids, I got to deliver stuff. And dependability is it, and you don't want to have something bad happen. So it's actually pretty simple, and if you're ever bored sometime, want to come down and fuel bus up, let me know, and we can hook you up. Well, you can hook it up, we won't hook you up, but we can hook it up and let you do it. These are just some other slides here. We are delivering the skid to come down to SARTA. If you thought an army of gophers had invaded us, and there wasn't a piece of blacktop that wasn't actually dug up, here they're actually delivering the vessels. Here's some of the piping. If you ever wanted to see the Borg take over something, it looked like it. We just had pipes and conduit everywhere. More pipes. And then we got to the point where we were digging up everything. I think we hit every piece of utility that was out there. Sometimes we didn't phone lines or water lines, because if you know, as-built drawings are more like as imagined, and they don't have anything on them. And we found everything. It was like a treasure hunt. We got to find all our utilities, so we know where they're at now. One of the other things, if you're storing CNG vehicles inside, I was talking about carbon fiber. Carbon fiber actually does allow some of the gas to occasion. There's a small dissipation factor in the carbon fiber tanks versus the steel actually doesn't have a small amount of dissipation. And Dave, when you're trying to set this up, you're actually trying to get the vehicles inside, but there's a problem with natural gas. In order to get to the flash point, the biggest problem with natural gas is getting into a pocket like a roof, and so you need to make sure that you change over. You either have spark-proof wiring in your building, or you need to change over your air in the building. And you can see all the silver new ductwork we put in. We have to change over the air in our garage every 15 minutes, or you actually need to get to the point that you have an explosion-proof wall. So we decided to go outside where there wasn't a roof, and we don't have the problem with that issue. One of the other things when you're thinking about the culture difference between natural gas and diesel or regular fuel, diesel is really easy. I mean, you want to measure the tank, you put a stick in it, and you take it out, and there's 3 feet of it. You want to carry it around, you carry it around a bucket. It's really, you want to pump it out, you use a pump. With natural gas, it's like, as I said, it's like a Goldilocks gas. It needs to be, everything has to be just right in order for the flammability to happen, and the engine has to be, you have to have hardened seals and some other things. And I can remember what the earlier Cummins, but don't tell the Cummins guys this, was loud as hell, quite honestly. You could be inside the building, don't tell them I said this, but you could feel the building vibrate. You remember the early engines that would do that? Yeah. But let's just say the third generation series are so quiet now, they're almost quieter than some of our hybrids. So you guys have came a long way, a very long way on the technology. Right now it's probably more dependable than the other vehicles we have. So you've done a good job in designing them. So here's some of the other HVAC stuff we had to put in. But the one thing about the danger I was saying in a building like this is the danger is really from the roof, 2 feet from the roof down. And if you think about it, the danger from regular gas vehicles, basically 2 feet up. So it is a culture change, and the things you have to think about, safety and that stuff. Some of the things, if you're thinking about yourself, do I want to become a retail CNG facility and sell lottery tickets and bait? We were thinking about selling lottery tickets as another source of revenue, but we decided not to. We might still open one up, not sure. But the total cost of it, but you can scale it from as small as $10,000 to a slow-filled unit for 2 or 3 trucks, or you can get it up as high as we have to doing that. The cost of CNG vehicles, you're probably looking at anywhere from 12,000 to 15,000 miles a year to really get your cost benefit back. If you don't drive them that much, it's going to be hard to make the financial argument. Building modifications, like I said, there's the issues you need to change that over. Also vehicle replacement, we don't usually do a conversion just because the cost is too much up front and need to annualize it out. There's also the training issue and awareness. Just kind of tell you a quick story. Anytime you're dealing with anything alternative, the building department doesn't do alternative very well. They just don't. So we knocked on the door. Yes, we'd like to put a CNG facility in place. And they said, we have no idea what you're talking about. And so what we did was we were planning to put those vessels out there, those CNG vessels, and they said, you'll need to put them underground. We're like, no, we don't put them underground. The standards are to put them above ground. So we had to go get a variance. And we had to explain them why you don't put natural gas underground, because it can accumulate into a pocket and go boom. So they said, okay, boom's not good. So they let us put them above ground. The other thing that's kind of funny when you're thinking about it, we got a phone call from the county auditor who said, do you have a sticker on your pump? You mean the sticker that says this weight and measure's been done? They said, yeah. They said, no, we don't. And they said, well, you need one. We're like, well, come on out here. And they said, we don't know how to do it. So we'll call you when we do. So they said, this is a true story. So they sent their guys to a national training conference in Oklahoma. They must have had a good week to test one facility. And they said, okay, we know how now. Well, come on out. We don't have the equipment. So we called Clean Energy, the people from the national company that has them, and so they brought them in. I don't know where they brought them in from, Texas or something. And they came out and they looked at us at the equipment and they're like, yeah, it says what it's supposed to. And they reach in their pocket and put the sticker on. So that's how you do it. If anything alternative, usually it's you telling them what to do, and usually it's, even the fire marshals and that stuff, we actually brought in the national consultant that wrote the code for CNG for the National Fire Marshals Association. So a lot of times when you're dealing with the stuff, you need to know more than they do, or you need to know at least as much as they do, because and it's nothing against the codes and that stuff. We've been trying to work with the Ohio Legislature, General Assembly, and trying to push forward statewide standards, training standards, fire standards, and that stuff. It's just this is such a new industry, and moving it forward is one of the things we've been trying to do. And that's one reason we even built this facility here, is try to increase public awareness and pull demand for this local product, trying to build demand for the infrastructure, and also trying to build a demand for products that are Ohio-built products and Ohio-manufactured, and trying to support jobs. So that was kind of all wrapped in what we're doing. And I think if you look at what our partnerships are in the Frankenstein laboratory David saw, that's one of the things we're trying to do here in Stark County, support this initiative in local job growth. So with that, if you're really interested, here's some locations that you can go and buy your new CNG vehicle, and you can come on down to our facility and fuel up at 1600 Gateway Boulevard, and we'll give you a free bus pass too. So with that, David, if you have any questions or anything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anything about the size of your operation that makes it more agile to adapt things like this? Is there a good size for a public transportation company to become more innovative, or are transit companies across the United States, including enormous ones in big cities, doing the same sort of thing?
The one thing I found is whatever transit system I work for is the most innovative. Innovation, that's a good question, David. The one thing I will say here in Stark County, and I don't know if it's just the culture of us locally, but we were the first one in the state of Ohio to have public CNG. We were one of the first ones in the state that, like I said, that had the iPhone app. I think here locally, I think what is important is more of a culture of innovation and partnership than necessarily size. And I think here in Stark County, we have that ability, and I think it's pretty much bore out here with the session you put together here. So,
you said Clean Energy was a partner in developing the station. Were they a capital partner? Did they invest? Do they get a return on the sale as a result? Or were they just an encouragement partner or an advisory partner?
The relationship we have with Clean Energy, they actually were given some money through stimulus to actually develop a number of locations through the state of Ohio. And as the front-end capital, they do the maintenance and marketing. They do all the the selling and that stuff of the natural gas. We actually then get basically a rent royalty on the backside, so the public partnership works that is both of us make a little bit of money off of it.
Questions here? Well, we're proud to have had you come to speak and talk about CNG innovation in Canton, Ohio, and let us thank Kirt for speaking.